Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's Entitled People story, my crazy neighbor took me to court and threatened to kill me because I parked my beautiful classic Cadillac on my private property. He claimed the car is an eyesore and completely freaked out on me. I got revenge and taught him a lesson. Here is what happened. So this story is about my neighbor who truly made me understand the meaning of Neighbors from Hell, aka this subreddit. So after my parents passed away, I was basically adopted by my uncle who had no child of his own. He treated me like his own family, and before his death he made sure to pass down to me everything he inherited, which included the 2 pieces of land he owned and his classic 1964 Cadillac de Ville. On one piece of land we had our house and the other was basically an empty fenced lot that my uncle used for yard parties. As for the classic car, it used to be a beauty, though it no longer was when I got it. But still, I wanted to honor him, so I decided to restore it. This happened when I was working on the exterior body of the car, paint and such. A neighbor had moved in on the other side of my house, and while I did not see much of him, I was reminded of his existence when I received a violation to the city ordinance that stated, "All vehicles on private property must be fully registered and licensed." Now, this was strange. My uncle and I have lived here for many years now, and obviously the car was not bought yesterday. The only difference was that now it was in the driveway instead of inside the garage because 1, I was still working on it, and 2, I had bought another car that took up the space inside. I called the city wondering why all of a sudden this car was a problem, and they told me that there had been a complaint. Nothing has changed in this neighborhood in previous months, nothing except this new neighbor. So for now, I decided to throw a cover on the car, but then it also meant that I had to remove it every time to do exterior bodywork and then wait for things to dry before again covering it. In short, it was a hassle. But I managed. Not 5 days have passed by and I get another violation. The cover was not enough, I needed to remove the car entirely from my property. So this time, I decided to pay a visit to my dear neighbor. He is a mid-30s guy, pretty thin but tall with an overall rugged appearance. I asked him if he knew anything about my car getting violations constantly, but he feigned ignorance and said that he doesn't have time to waste on my old disgusting eyesore of a car before he slammed the door shut. Well, fine then, if he does not care, then why should I remove my car? I instead shifted my car to my backyard, did away with the cover and started working on it again. 3 days later, there is no violation in sight, but there is a slash tire on my car. I got CCTV installed so I can clearly see this hellish neighbor hopping in on my property and damaging my car, and while I do have evidence, I cannot sue him because there is still the whole case of my car being supposedly unlicensed. I decided to talk to a few of my friends about this, and one of them suggested me to do something like a Cadillac Ranch. It's an art sculpture thing in Texas which involves classic Cadillacs, and because these cars are now pieces of art, licensing or registering of them is not an issue. I was actually a bit hesitant to do this because it meant destroying the car, but I knew I had no use for it anyway, and maybe my uncle will get a laugh out of this as well. So I decided to use my uncle's empty plot for my art exhibition, move the car to that lot and put it on exhibition. I expected to get another violation for this, and while I did get that, I also got a fine with it. This was getting ridiculous. But I did not stop. In the following days, I painted my art structure all the colors that my uncle loved and all the colors that will shine bright in the night so my neighbor can never escape this car. If he was going to become my nightmare, then I will make sure this car became his. Surprisingly, after a few days he himself decided to visit me or stand outside the fence as I worked. "Neighbor, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Me, "What does it look like I'm doing?" "Neighbor, you're ruining the look of this neighborhood with your disgusting car." Me, "Don't look then, this is not your neighborhood anyway." It was at this point that this man started coming towards me. The gate to my property was locked, but I still reached for the pliers near my feet, and just for evidence, picked up my phone to start recording our conversation. "Neighbor, this is not your neighborhood as well. You cannot just put up any junk and not expect anyone to have a problem." Me, "You're literally the only one who has a problem, and this is all you're doing. I was anyway going to build a new garage for when this car was done, but you decided to butt in before that." Neighbor, "You stupid idiot. Take this horrendous monstrosity down or I will beat both of you and this car to the damn ground." Death threats over a car? Really? This man was really insane. Me, "Keep your threats to yourself." Neighbor, "You think I cannot follow through, huh?" If you want, I can beat your body to a pulp where you are standing. So remove this car or I will show you what it means to be near death. Me, I don't think I will. Instead, I think I will sue you for these threats. Neighbor, you cannot sue me. I am suing you if you don't take this garbage right now. Okay, sue me. Take this to court if you want. The next day, I had police knocking on my door inquiring about the violation I had received. I told them that my neighbor was the one who complained and if he or the city wants to take me to court, they can. My neighbor, being not only a jerk but also an idiot, did decide to take me to court over my unlicensed car. He also claimed that I am acting against the city by not paying the fine and taking the law into my hands. Well, a lot of words for a man who broke into my property. Anyway, I shared that footage of him and sued him instead. I also presented the recording of him giving me death threats. At the end, I showed the picture of a Cadillac ranch in Texas to prove that my car was indeed an art structure. As was expected, the judge agreed in my favor and left my art untouched. As for the neighbor, he was charged for breaking into a property, damaging a private property, and threatening my life. So while I got home to my art piece, he got home to a hefty fine on his head. I also decided to spray paint the exact amount that he was fined on my car on the side that faced his house in bright neon. So every waking moment that he looked in the direction of my car, all he saw was his own defeat shining back at him. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would love to know if you have any classic cars, and if so, what is your favorite classic car? Let me know in the comments. Long-term viewers of this channel probably know that I really love the 1969 Pontiac GTOs. However, I don't think I would ever own a car like this, especially in Thailand. Anyway, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. Thank you so much. The next one is a petty revenge story. This story is about my son. I was not a bad dad and he turned out pretty good. Journeyman electrician, works at a F500 company, but anyway, when he was 16, a long time ago, he needed 30 bucks for a school trip. I gave it to him several days in advance. The night before the school function, he told me he had spent it and needed another $30. I finally forced it out of him that he had bought weed. I don't have a problem with it. If you pull all the things I've smoked in a pile, it would be bigger than a house. But now he needed more money, so I said, okay, you go with me to the store and do what I ask and I will give you more money and even throw in a little extra. He agreed, having pretty much no choice. I grabbed something out of the kitchen on the way out. We went to Target, kind of an upscale joint around here for simple stuff, but before we got out of the car, I told him the deal. You gotta wear a hat made of this aluminum foil and you cannot talk to anybody. If somebody says something or asks you a question, just mumble, I cannot take it again, not like last time. He agreed. I made the hat, included a little point on the top and 2 flaps that covered his ears. I put kind of a tail at the back and it looked perfect. So I walked around the store and he had to stay at least 10 feet away so people would not think that we were together. I heard him mumble unintelligent stuff a few times as people stared and walked past. He never broke character and we walked through nearly every section: electronics, toys, men's and women's clothing, auto, pharmacy and food. It took nearly 45 minutes for me to grab the 3 things we went for. I gave him the card and enough money to pay for it and watched as he went through the line. When we got back to the car, I said, F it, he did a good job, and gave him 50 bucks. Update for all wondering about how much damage his psyche experienced: he graduated with honors, became a licensed journeyman electrician, and is employed by a world-renowned company. This happened nearly 20 years ago. He now has 3 lovely kids of his own. This might also clear up some of the pricing of weed comments. He is the kid who could name all the planets in order when he was 3 years old. He knew I would give him the money whether he did anything or not. I think he accepted the terms to get a little bit more and maybe to have a good time with dad to make up for spending it on weed. I am quite proud of him. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Do you think this was good parenting or not? Let me know. And the next one is titled Massive Revenge. I was a support worker at a disability shared accommodation agency where I was responsible for providing essential support and care to individuals with disabilities. My role was not just challenging, but also incredibly rewarding, as I was able to form close relationships with the residents and other staff members. However, everything changed when the house supervisor fell ill and was replaced by Karen, a fellow staff member who, unfortunately, had a tendency to abuse her power. I soon noticed that Karen and her clique were taking advantage of the company's first-come first-served policy for leave requests. Despite my numerous attempts to take time off for important events such as school holidays or even Christmas, my leave requests were constantly denied. This caused me immense frustration as I felt like I was being unfairly treated. In January, a gastro outbreak occurred in the house and Karen and her clique were on holiday. All available staff, including the CEO, were required to cover the shifts. I was paired with the CEO, who kindly suggested that I take some of my accumulated leave. I requested 4 weeks off over Christmas and the CEO approved my leave form, which I photocopied for my records and placed in Karen's pigeonhole. However, to my disbelief, when I checked the leave calendar in March, I discovered that my Christmas leave had been replaced with Karen and her friends. I was angry, but I remained patient and waited for the right moment to act. Several months later, in October, the original house supervisor passed away and Karen was appointed as the permanent supervisor. During my first week of Christmas leave, Karen called me demanding to know my whereabouts. When I informed her that I was on leave, she became angry and accused me of insubordination, writing me up for skipping work. This was my opportunity to fight back. So I promptly emailed the CEO, informing him of the situation, and he scheduled a meeting with Karen and me. When Karen tried to blame me for not showing up to work, I produced the photocopied leave form with the CEO's signature and told the truth about my leave request. The CEO was shocked and immediately terminated Karen's employment. I was finally able to spend my Christmas with my family just as I had always desired. This experience taught me a valuable lesson that no matter how powerful the bully may seem, honesty always prevails in the end. Following Karen's termination, the company launched a full investigation into her actions and the allegations made against her. It was discovered that she had not only been manipulating the leave calendar and denying other staff members time off, but she had also been physically and emotionally abusing several of the residents in the shared accommodation. The company was shocked and saddened by these findings and they took immediate steps to rectify the situation. The residents were relocated to new accommodations and the company brought in a new team of support workers to provide them with the care and support they needed. I was offered the opportunity to return as a support worker and was overjoyed to be back working with the residents who had become like a family to me. Over the next few months, I watched as the residents thrived in their new environment and the company worked hard to regain the trust of both the residents and their families. The CEO personally apologized to me for the situation and I was offered a promotion to a higher position within the company. I happily accepted, eager to use my experiences and knowledge to make a positive impact on the lives of others. In the end, the evil Karen's actions only served to bring about positive change for the residents, the staff, and the company as a whole. I learned that even in the face of adversity, it's always important to stand up for what is right and to never let bullies get the best of you. And while I will never forget the dark days under Karen's reign, I am grateful for the opportunities that arose from her downfall, and I am proud to be part of a company that is dedicated to making a positive difference in the world. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm very happy that the story took a turn for the better and that in the end people stood up to this bully and finally came out on top. I just love stories in which bullies get destroyed. Either way, the next one is titled Malicious Compliance. Years ago, I worked in the energy industry. My location was manned by a single person, working 10-hour days with 8 days on and 6 days off. In the off hours, automation kept things running. During those 8 days I was on call, so if there was a problem at the location, I was required to drop what I was doing and either log in to fix some issues or drive the 50 miles out to the facility to fix the problem. Company policy stated that if there was a call, regardless if it warranted a response to drive out or if we could handle it remotely through our computer, we got paid for a minimum of 2 hours at a time and a half. After a particularly rough shift with lots of nights spent on location, I went on a much-needed set of days off. On my first day off, my counterpart on the other shift called with questions about the problems I had. I answered and went about resting. The next day, I decided to take a break and go off-grid for the day. When I returned, I had a number of calls from my boss. When I called him back, he reprimanded me and told me that I was an on-call employee, so I need to answer when called. Annoyed, I just said okay, but asked him to follow that up with an email, which he did. We talked more about the problems for about 10 minutes and then hung up. That evening, my counterpart part called 3 more times and we talked through some ideas for fixing it. Over the next 4 days I had off he, my boss, and others working on the issue called many times. Now remember when my boss said I was an on-call employee and I was required to answer? Well, I added each call to my timesheet. At the end of my 6 days off I had made just as many hours as I would in my 8-day shift. At the end of the pay period, I was called into the office where he and the district manager demanded that I explain the excessive callouts. I provided the email sent to me by my boss as well as the company policy for calls. They said that was a pretty wide interpretation of both. I countered and said that I'd been called, and I answered as required by my boss's email, so per policy I was entitled to call-out pay. They disagreed and called in the vice president and HR, who surprisingly agreed with me. I was paid out for the time and the rule became that you were only to call off duty employees in dire emergencies. I was never called on my days off again. And yeah, ripe stars, I gotta say, I absolutely hate these jobs where you still have to work on your days off. Unfortunately, many modern jobs don't really allow you to simply shut off your brain when you go home. Usually you still have some kind of stuff to do at home, like answer emails or maybe think about the project for the next day or something. And that is something I usually never really liked. Although YouTube is actually exactly that, but YouTube is just fun, so I don't really mind. The next one is titled Builder's Revenge. I work alone in a small office in a public building that is undergoing some renovations while it is closed to the public. There is an office space in front of my office that is usually unoccupied. Think of an office space with the manager's office attached at the end. I just rent the manager's office. Building managers were supposed to notify us if they ever intended to rent out the space in front of my office so we could build a temporary wall or something. So I did not need to walk through someone else's office to get to mine. But I guess they thought that they did not need to do this because the builders are only there temporarily. So now the space is occupied by the site office for construction. I am slightly annoyed at the building management for not notifying me of this, but I am way more annoyed at the builders because the space has turned into a dumping ground. To get to my office I have to walk past light fixtures, tool bags, random chairs in the walkway and a toilet bowl. And I have to listen to builders talking crap while 12 of them sit in a room fit for 5 having lunch. It is like a teenager's bedroom, but instead of clothes and stale socks, the floor is covered in building materials and tools. I asked them to keep it clear as it is the walkway to my office and not a storeroom. And they say sure, but basically roll their eyes at me and do nothing. So I took some pictures of the mess and reported it to the building management, and 1 week later they tidied up slightly and gave me a sassy "Ah, we cleaned up a bit around here for you, mate, no need to thank us," as I walked in that morning. A few days later and it was almost worse than it was before, to the point that I could not leave my office without moving 4 boxes of supplies out from directly in front of the door yesterday. I also hear them whispering about how I am such a bad person and a stuck-up public servant. I'm private sector, but whatever. Cut to today, I go to step out to get a coffee, and before I open the door, I look through the window of the door to see someone's half-eaten spaghetti sitting on the floor right in front of the doorway. I lose my composure for a moment and say F it, open the door and trip on the bowl of spaghetti, causing it to spray all over the room and the 2 builders in the room. Spaghetti gets on everything, sauce on their computers, noodles in the bloody toilet bowl, it's in the carpet and most impressively all over the builders. They start to shout at me, but I get just as mad saying, "Who the hell puts a bowl of spaghetti on the floor in front of a door?" I kind of snapped at this point and started lambasting them, which is very out of character for me. I told them this is an office and not a storeroom, and you are worse than my teenage nephew, and told them to clean their stuff up or I will start kicking everything aside that's in the path, delicate or not. They sheepishly say yes and I go get my coffee. When I return, no one is in the office and the mess is still on everything. I think they wiped the laptops down, but I don't care at this point and retreat into my office and focus on work. Fast forward a few hours and I get an email from the building management. I crack a huge smile as I read an email basically saying, "The builders reported your conduct and had us come inspect the damage. However, we noticed the unacceptable amount of mess in the office space had not been cleared up from the last time we asked them to. And they admitted the food was placed on the floor in front of the doorway. So we expect them to clean up the mess, pay for cleaning, and place no blame on you in this case. If the mess comes back, call us directly as they are on their last warning from a few other incidents in the building. It was a longer and more official email, but you get the point. So now I am occasionally looking through the window on the door while builders crawl around on their hands and knees scrubbing spaghetti out of the carpet. I'm not proud of losing my cool and handling things the way I did, but I won't deny that it worked and it felt really good. Yeah guys, today Disney is once again helping me record and create YouTube content. She's such a good cat, right Disney? Boop boop, boop boop. Oh. Usually nowadays she also likes it when I put the blanket in her box. I guess because then it's like smaller and more cozy for her. So yeah, she likes that a lot. Can hear her purr. Disney, time to sleep. Time to sleep while I'm recording. Okay guys, I don't want to disturb Disney too much. So thank you very much for watching. And I will see you again tomorrow. Good night, Disney.